Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm Maddy Martin. I'm the Senior Vice President of Growth at Smith.ai, and I'm really excited to present Janet Mobley and her presentation today, which is on translating revenue goals into lead generation KPIs. So KPI is Key Performance Indicator. Now, Janet is the founder of FatCat Strategies. She has decades of experience in consulting with home services businesses and other companies. And today she's going to walk you through how to set monthly lead goals by product or service line, how to better improve booking rates to lower your marketing costs, how to plan lead targets and your budget when you're expanding into a new location, and how to use lead volume calculators to customize your 2026 goals and just set you up for success towards those goals. And what a better time than to be thinking about this now, right at the beginning of Q4 in 2025. So Janet, I will let you take it away.
All right, Maddy, you can still see my screen, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so as Maddy said, what we're going to do is we're going to dive into some spreadsheets. I'm a spreadsheet nerd. I hope that others will at least go on that nerd journey with me. So as Maddy said, the first part of it, we're going to do some big picture, how to set big picture goals for how many leads you need to hit your revenue goals based on the revenue. I'm going to share my screen and share some spreadsheets. Then we're going to take a deep dive, which is where Maddy has so much expertise on how better appointment booking rates can actually lower your marketing costs. And then the third scenario is, what does it look like if you want to expand into a new territory? Everything I'm showing today, we are going to provide a copy of the blank spreadsheets to all the webinar attendees. So pay attention, sip your coffee, but know that you'll get a copy of this after the webinar. Before we dive into some spreadsheets, just a few minutes about FatCat Strategies. As Maddy said, we are a digital marketing agency and we work exclusively with home improvement contractors. Our clients are in the category of replacement contractors, where they're typically replacing something that's already on the home, replacing a roof, your siding, windows, doing a one-day bath. Most of our clients are heavily affiliated and aligned with a small number of manufacturers. They're either installing James Hardie siding or jacuzzi baths or awnings. And so we love our clients. We know this business. We're excited about it. The way that we work is we customize all of our services. We start with research and analysis. Once we know more about your business and what your goals are, it's only then that we start to call plays and tactics. Every month, we're reviewing those plays and tactics and adjusting as needed. Our services tend to fall into two categories. There's a category of services that's generating the lead, and then a category of services that is to nurture the leads. On the lead generation side of things, you're looking at search engine optimization, paid ads, conversion rate optimization, and we build and maintain websites. On the nurture side, that can be text, direct mail, email. We also offer social media services and even print design services. So that's a little bit about us. As I said earlier, you will get a copy of everything that we cover. If you put questions in the chat, I'm hoping that Maddy can help me drive this thing and let me know what the questions are as we go along.
Well,
And if you want to take it a step further, so you're going to get a copy of a blank spreadsheet that you can kind of customize, but if you would like us to help you, we would love that. So if you want some customized analysis, you want us to really take a deep dive into what's going on with your business, you can book a discovery call with us. If you mention this webinar, then we will, it's really like a two-part call. We get some information at first, and then we come back with customized research based on what you told us, research and recommendations. So that is free. The link is here. It will also be provided in the email. So without further ado, let's get into some spreadsheet fun.
do it.
I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Maddy, what do you think about the size of this? Is it too big?
Pretty good. Yeah,
Huh?
it looks good to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go through 4 different tabs. On the first tab, I'm going to act as if I were talking to a new client. And this is exactly how we go through it. I want to know, like, what was your revenue last year and what is your goal for the upcoming year? So let's say you were, I always have to do this once or twice. Let's say you were $4.5 million last year and your goal is 5.75 for the next 12 months. Or you're tracking to be 4.5 in 2025 and you're looking at 5.7 next year as a goal. That's about a 30% growth rate. We always start there. The next thing I want to know is what services are you offering? Let's say you're doing 1-day baths, you're doing some window replacements, and you do decks. And let's say your average ticket price is $12,500 for baths. Let's go like $25,000 for a full house full of windows and maybe $8,500 for decks. The next thing that we need to know is how does your revenue split out? So let's say you get 70% of all of your revenue from the bath remodeling that you're doing. You get 20% in windows, and decks are not a huge part of your business. Um, but you do them seasonally as they come along. So it's 10%, it's not a huge amount. So that's not going to be a huge focus of your marketing. So that's how your revenue splits out. The next thing that we need to know to make this work, and this is where Smith AI is such a great partner for us. We want to know of all of the inbound leads, that's phone calls and web form submissions, on average, big picture, how many of those are you turning into appointments? So for the purposes of doing our example today, let's say 4 out of 10 calls you turn into qualified appointments. After that, then the job's on you and your sales team to close the sale. We're just making up numbers here. Let's say your average closing ratio across all service lines is 50%. Now that I have those numbers, your revenue numbers, I now know your business needs to generate 182 leads every single month to hit that revenue goal, because I know what your appointment set rate is and your closing ratio, your average ticket price, and your revenue split. So 182, where are you going to get that number? This is where we start to drill down a little bit further. Let's say, I don't know, you get 15 a month, every month, word of mouth. Let's say you're buying 75 leads a month from lead aggregators. You get 20 from the manufacturers that you install. They run their own national campaigns, and maybe you're doing home shows, but seasonally. I'll just guess, let's say, and these numbers could be low. So let's say this is what your pie looks like. You've got all these leads coming into your organization from different sources. Well, we know based on these big picture numbers of your service lines, your ticket price, your revenue split, and your ratios, that in order for you to hit this, you're not going to hit it. You're not going to nail it every month, but on average, you need to get about 180 leads every month. And you're currently getting, let's say, 125. Well, now you can start to set up a strategy to close that gap with digital marketing. And now your digital marketing for your SEO, your email campaigns, your social, and your PPC campaigns is 57. Does this all make sense, Maddy? I'm just going to look at you since you're the only person I can see.
Yeah, yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. Basically, what is it going to take to close the gap?
Yes. So the first number we need to know is, like, it's great to set a revenue goal of, say, close to 6 million, but do you know what numbers you need to hit every month to make sure you're on track for that? Okay, once we have this kind of big picture math, then it gets fun. So this next tab, what I've done at the top is I'm carrying forward these assumptions that we entered on the data entry tab. So again, let's say you're at 4.5, you want to get to 5.75, your current closing ratio is 50%. You know you've got to hit that 182 leads a month. Well, that number is already bigger than it was, because if you're growing and you want to have more revenue, you got to generate more leads. And we've actually seen some of our clients kind of fall into a trap of like, well, I tend to generate 100 leads a month, that they get like a mental mindset, and they fail to move the goalpost. But if your revenue goals are bigger, then your lead generation goals have to be bigger. So with this example, if you were at 4.5 last year and your goal is 5.75, for the last 12 months, you've only needed 143 leads a month. Now you need 182 just to keep up with that pace. So another thing that we really like to do that we find helpful. So this 182 number can feel daunting, or maybe it feels normal, or maybe it feels low to some of you on the call. Depending on how your revenue splits out and where you want to spend your focus, let's say you historically and strategically moving forward, you want 70% of your revenue to come from baths. Well, then you're going to need more bath leads than deck leads. This helps us figure out how to configure your digital marketing campaigns. We shouldn't take your budget and spend all your budget on decks if you only need 28 deck leads, but you need 134 bath leads, if that makes sense. So, one thing that we also like to do at this point is to have a conversation with clients about, your closing ratio for windows could be different from baths, or you could do roofing and siding. Like if I were to replace this with roofing and siding, roofing leads might close at a higher rate because if your roof is leaking, you're more motivated to fix it. If you're replacing your siding for aesthetic reasons, maybe you get more quotes. There's not as much pressure to like fix that on your house. So by service line, we've had our clients tell us you can have different closing ratios depending on what the product is, and there could be some seasonality. So here's where we can start to drill a little bit deeper and say, okay, across the board for the whole company, we said the closing ratio was 50%. Well, maybe you've got some rock star, super seasoned salespeople in your bath division, and that's where you get most of your revenue. So it's where you've invested most of your training. What if they had a 60% closing ratio? Well, now you don't need as many leads because you close more of them. So all of these ratios, when you drill down, can impact the overall number that you need. Let's say windows in your market, there's heavy competition from, Window World and Renewal by Andersen, or, even Home Depot running specials. Maybe people who book window appointments with you are, they're price shopping and they're not as motivated to fix their windows. So maybe your closing ratio is lower for windows than the aggregate across. Well, now you're going to need more window leads. I'm talking a lot. So if has anybody put any questions
You're
into?
great. You're
Okay.
following along just fine.
Okay. So that's kind of how we start to break down, again, just a few big picture data points and start to dial it in so that we as digital marketers have a better sense of month by month. If this hypothetical scenario was our client, we know as an agency we need to be generating 24 window leads and 28 deck leads and 112 bath leads every month. And so when we are checking on campaigns, we're looking for phone calls and web form submissions, text chats in these categories. And if it's halfway through the month and we haven't generated, 56 bath leads, we know we're not going to make it that month. And I'm encouraging everyone on the call to think about it that way. It's all about pacing. You need to know what your KPIs are. And look, if you're 1 week into the month, you should be 25% towards that KPI.
Janet,
Okay.
can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
So you're in North Carolina. I'm in Buffalo, New York, as we established earlier. So,
Yes.
I think a lot about seasonality. My husband likes to do projects, and we've had contractors here, runs the gamut. I can't imagine putting a deck in, past December.
In Buffalo.
Yeah. So, how much are you factoring seasonality into, these service lines, are you incorporating that into your closing rate and you're taking that into account already? Or once you have this number, are you then trying to distribute that 164, in different weights across the year, meaning some months are going to have to take more on and some months are going to end up taking less on because of seasonality?
Short answer is absolutely yes. For the
Okay.
purposes of today's webinar, we're skimming the surface of this methodology where, we're kind of checking reality at the door and saying, like, every month is exactly the same and we need 164 leads, especially with awnings, um, decks, patios, any kind of summer product. That's you're just going to have a hard time generating those leads at Christmas unless you're running a promotion. Book us now when we're not busy, lock in your savings for next year.
Oh,
So when we do this stuff for our clients, we will start here, then we start to break it down by month and by service line. And we need information from our clients. It's very much a partnership for them to tell us, historically, if you've been in business for 10 years, what has your season looked like? And then we will adjust our strategies, our messaging, and our PPC budgets based on some of those seasonal changes.
right.
Just take decks, for example. I don't know that we would advise that you run ads in December in Buffalo for deck projects.
Right. Unless you're running a really amazing deal.
Yeah. So the question was, do we distribute this number, this KPI evenly over all 12 months? The answer is no, but I was honestly uh spent a lot of time, like, way too deep in my head trying to figure out how nerdy I wanted to get on this webinar.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, understood. I mean,
we're skimming the surface of spreadsheet nerd here.
totally, totally. I think, there's folks who are on this call who are thinking, not even in home services, but in other industries. But services is a good one to use because it's so crystal clear. We all know the weather, right? So we can think about, okay, if you do have that 12-month cycle, you know, you're not necessarily behind or ahead of your goal depending on where you are in the season, right? Now,
Correct.
if it's Buffalo, New York, and you have a deck target of 28 leads a month and you've been behind that target, you're not going to catch up in
At
Q3,
Christmas.
right? So,
No.
you also do want to be thinking about your pacing and whether or not that's realistic and where you're going to have to overinvest, upfront sort of invest in that earlier in the year or mid-year if you have these goals.
And in fact, if we go back to this data entry, I mean, again, this is like, freshman course on this stuff. It can get way more complicated. Like, I put in as a hypothetical home shows and then made up a number.
Right.
Home shows don't happen every month.
Right.
So for our home improvement clients, they tend to have home show season. So
Yes.
that's usually in the spring and the fall. And if they're really doing a lot of home shows, then that number could really balloon depending on the number of home shows that they're going to, and then completely die the next month because they're not attending any home shows. So this would be another example of something that is, like, not evenly distributed.
Mhm.
But the reason I thought it was hopefully helpful, we'll find out from the attendees here if they tell us if it was helpful or boring or whatever, is you have to start somewhere.
Yes.
If you just, like, throw a dart out there and say, I want to make $4 million or $20 million, you have to break that down and start somewhere with some sort of big picture goal, and then dial it in by service line, by territory, by season, by lead source, etc.
Great.
So if we're ready, I think we can
Oh,
go on to the next scenario, which is, I think, right in your wheelhouse, about how appointment set rates can really help you save on marketing. Does that sound good, or did we have any comments?
yeah, absolutely. Let's jump in.
Okay, so again, we're still sticking with the same scenario, a 4.5 million company that wants to grow about 30%. We've input what the services are, what the ticket price is. And right now I've got this global, like across the whole company, on average, for every 10 phone calls and web form submissions, you're turning 4 of those into an appointment. That is telling us, so let's capture this number right now based on all these assumptions. What we're saying at this like first pass of analysis is you need 182 leads a month. So this down here is a slightly different way to look at your lead sources. And again, these are just sort of like ballpark guesses, hypothetical for the purpose of this webinar. Let's say historically you've gotten about 5% of your leads from word of mouth. Historically, you've had to buy half of the leads you need from lead aggregators like Angie's List, Home Advisor, Quinn Street. Let's say whatever manufacturer you're installing, whether it's Pella Windows or James Hardie Siding or a luxury bath product, that your manufacturer provides you with some leads that come through those national campaigns. And let's say in your business that's been 10%. Let's say you get 5% of your leads from home shows, 30% from your digital marketing campaigns. This mix can look wildly different depending on the business. So if we put in all these assumptions with these ticket prices, the number of jobs per month, appointments, etc., you need 182 leads per month. And this is how they break down by channel. Now, here is another just wild guess. Let's say from lead aggregators, you're paying about 150. Those are actually going up. Let's say you're paying $175 a lead. Some of our jacuzzi clients, they're paying $200 to $500 to the manufacturer for jacuzzi leads. Home shows, it depends on so many factors. Let's just guess at $100. And then digital marketing, if we really dial our campaigns in, what we found is the leads that your own exclusive digital marketing campaigns generate usually are higher qualified and lower cost once you look at all of the costs. Takes a while to get that dialed in, but let's just guess at 78 per lead. Based on all these guesses, you might be spending 25 grand a month on marketing. Now, let's say you hire Smith.ai and you've been doing a 40% appointment set rate. What if you could improve that by 50%? Like just set 5 appointments instead of 4. If you changed nothing else, you now need fewer leads. So you're buying fewer from the lead aggregators, and maybe you don't even bump up your digital marketing spend because you're setting and you're qualifying and setting more appointments. With all of these assumptions, just by improving your appointment set rate from 40 to 50%, you can save close to $4,000 a month. What if you could get it to 55%? This is one of the things that I really wanted to drive home, is that you can dial in different parts of your sales and marketing funnel and gain efficiencies and actually save on the marketing costs, just because you're generating better qualified leads and you're turning them into appointments at a higher rate. Now, Maddy, I wanted to get your input on this. I kind of thought it would be fun. In this scenario, let's say this company has been historically setting appointments at 40%. They contact you, they're wary, they don't want to go all in, but baths are really important to them, and they only want you to help improve the set rate on baths. Mm-hmm. Because that's where they want to get 70% of their revenue from. Let's say you helped them go up to 60%. Now they need a lot fewer leads, and they could be saving $6 grand a month on marketing because they don't need as many leads because you're helping convert more of those into educated, ready appointments. I didn't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about some scenarios that you've encountered and how you've dialed in those set rates.
Absolutely. So we know that the single biggest determining factor of whether or not a lead is going to choose your business versus another business is who's the first to answer the call, right? If you don't pick up the phone and if you don't have great customer service on that phone call and steer them on every next step on that phone call, you're not going to get the business. But picking up is the hinge that leverages everything else, right? So answering the call and 24/7, right? Like, you know that the homeowner is, either taking care of children, elderly parents, they're working one or two jobs, they have various schedules, everyone is busy, and it's not necessarily viable to also have a financial conversation in front of everyone in the household. So they're going to call at a wide range of times. So you want to
Absolutely.
make sure that whenever they call, that you are responsive, even though it's not going to be you personally, that you have deployed a deputy, a representative to be responsive on your behalf because you have bigger fish to fry, right? There was a time in your business when you probably answered the phone yourself, but it's not now, especially not at these revenue goals, right? You've got a staff, you have a team, they're in the field, and you need to focus on other things. So when you have a receptionist, whether it's an AI receptionist or human receptionist, they can improve this appointment set rate, one, by answering the call, two, by qualifying the lead and making sure that they are in your service area, that they are a viable buyer. They have set aside a budget for this, that they
They're
know
a homeowner and not a renter.
they're a homeowner and not a renter. All the other qualification factors that you know are important to you in screening your leads, it's probably 3 to 5 criteria, right? Not all the nice to know things that you're going to do on a new client intake form, but the true screening criteria for your new clients. And at that point, they're going to schedule an in-home estimate. Perhaps you want to have a phone call with them prior to that. Not typically. You're going to schedule that in-home estimate at a time that you're available based on your calendaring software that I'm sure you have implemented. And that appointment's going to happen. And you can also have, follow-up text reminders to make sure that that is on that person's calendar. Ideally, the calendar is set so that if you're using Calendly or other solutions, you already have your reminders baked into your calendaring software to make sure that you have a very high show rate and that person is there when they say they're going to be at home. Now, thanks to a lot of people working from home, you don't have such an issue with that maybe as in the past. But for folks who are having digital, online consultations, virtual consultations, that's something you want to make sure that your show rate is really high because you want that appointment set rate to be reflective of the amount of new qualified leads that are really in your pipeline. And the way that you're going to build your pipeline is to make sure those first meetings show up. So I would make sure that you have your criteria really clear on how you screen new leads. And that is going to translate across every single lead source. And it might be specific to certain service lines, right? Like if you have a deck customer, you need to know what real estate are you going to be working with? How big is this backyard we're talking about and what could possibly be in the way? Oh, there's a pool in the way that you need an above ground pool that needs to be removed. Okay, well, that's relevant, right?
Right.
So what questions do you need to ask? What obstacles are you going to face on this job? And are those obstacles that you're equipped to handle, or are those obstacles that are beyond sort of your wherewithal? So those are the questions we want to get out of the way first. And before we move on, I do want to bring up a question that Franco raised, which is for B2B customers, right? So typically the workflow that I'm talking about works for both B2C and B2B customers, but Franco's question more around, how do you approach lead generation for B2B versus B2C, and if there's a big difference. I would say, obviously Janet knows a lot more about this than I do, but you're going to have a different mix, but a different cost of those leads probably as well that's relative to your upside. So, Janet, how can we set some expectations for Franco on that front?
So before FatCat started focusing exclusively on home improvement, we've been in business 25 years and we pivoted to home improvement in 2018. Prior to that, I have spent thousands of hours doing B2B marketing, largely for software, professional services. B2B is pretty different from B2C. I mean, when we plug in numbers to this scenario, which is very specific to home improvement, you know, you've got an average ticket. Like you're installing the same kind of product, you know what it's going to be, you know what some of these ratios are, and these kinds of sales funnels and marketing campaigns for, say, gutter replacement, window replacement, siding, baths, the marketing and the follow-up is more transactional. You know, somebody fills out a form, they're interested in having their old tile ripped out and, you know, a shower system put in. They want a quote and they want it quickly, which is why Smith.ai and services like that are so important to like respond, pick up the phone. In my experience, depending on what the B2B service is, if it's a big ticket piece of software. I mean, we used to have a client that did SAP integration with like global manufacturers. They've got supply chain issues. They've got manufacturers in multiple places. They're getting, you know, it's a big deal. And so their sale, this is a former client, this SAP integration tool, you know, one sale could be six figures and it's a multi-year contract. So the number of leads that that company needed to generate were far fewer and very specific job titles that were in a position to make a critical software decision that's going to impact their entire business. So for B2B, depending on the price of the thing that you're selling, the number of leads that you need can be a lot lower and the sales cycles a lot longer. Because if you're spending $300,000 on a 4-year software piece of software with training and implementation and data migration, you're not going to make that decision like you'd buy a t-shirt online. You're not going to impulse buy that.
You're not. You're not. Well, so Franco's business is engineering drafting for HVAC solutions, and their target audience are architects.
Okay.
So the end client is like the developer or an owner. So not necessarily so big, right? I mean, they're probably buying more like an SMB, more like a consumer than that far end of the spectrum of the SAP buyer. You know, and they don't necessarily look, Franco, that different than the consumer slash SMB buyer, which I kind of lump into one group.
Right.
The targeting is very close on those two groups, right? Um, but you are still selling a service, right? So
Yeah.
it can only be so transactional online. You still have to have a conversation before you're making a sale, right? And that's where it's important that you make sure you're on the same page. So, you know, a lot of your marketing is probably going to be, you know, local marketing and networking, making sure that you are a thought leader in the space locally, and, you know, how are you getting the word out through education and expertise, and making sure that you are, you know, in the relevant circles where new topics are arising. There's probably a lot of Facebook groups and things like that that you can get referrals through. And I would be really driving the relationship with your existing clients, because
Yeah.
that referral network is going to be, you know, something that you'll want to leverage. And you can post in the chat, you know, what your current strategies are.
Um, I had a question for you, Maddie. So, you know, I've got this hypothetical company that's doing baths, windows, and decks. And then we took their appointment set ratio with your help from 40 to 60%.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about what is, you know, maybe a few like success stories of where your company came in and someone's appointment set rate was X and you helped it increase to Y? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. Number one, I want to set you up to look like a rock star. But number two, you know, we've been working with home improvement contractors across the United States, like I said, since 2018. It's all we do. I shouldn't be shocked anymore, but I am still shocked When we encounter a company that is up and running, they're a multi-million-dollar company, they've been doing roofing for 10 years, by a lot of measures, they're successful. They hire us as their agency.
Mhm.
We work really hard. We generate the leads that we all agreed we needed to generate, and they go into this black hole. The
Yes.
phone rings and rings and rings and rings and rings. That people fill out forms. There's no one there to reply when the forms are filled out. Like, it is an actual real problem. And
Mhm.
your marketing agency can only carry that lead so far. They bring it to the front door and hand it to you and say, here is a lead.
Right.
Please handle it with care. I didn't know if you had any insight on, like, what is a realistic improvement rate that you could help with. I mean, I have a client right now. I'm sorry. I know I talk a lot. In
No.
Ohio, they are a roofing company. I love these guys. They are, a family company. They've
Mhm.
done really well. And they are kind of in their own head where they've got their office manager and the woman that does their bookkeeping answering the phones.
Mhm.
We record all inbound phone calls. We have software that tracks it and tags it and puts channels on it. We can tell if it came from SEO or from PPC or from Facebook. We listen to those recordings.
Mhm.
80% of the time, they don't even answer the phone
Right.
because people in the office are quote unquote busy. They are busy, but they're spending time, money, and energy to generate these leads. And homeowners are calling, and the phone rings and rings and rings. When it does pick up, it
Mhm.
goes through this complicated phone tree that
Mhm.
nobody wants to listen to. And so they're spending money on leads. Like, let's just look at this spreadsheet. Let's say they needed 55 leads from digital marketing and we could generate them for 78 bucks a pop. They're
Mhm.
spending $4,000 a month to generate leads, and then they don't answer the phone.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
Not
it's
like I'm preaching to the choir, but like, what is a lift that you would see? Like, what is a percent that you see at the beginning, and what can you bring it up to?
Well, I want to back up for a second because, that is going to individually vary based on the types of clients that you want and how picky you are and what a client is worth to you, right? So there are a lot of variables here that we've got to work with. And we've had thousands of clients. We currently have thousands of clients. So there are a lot of stories. But I want to go back to that example that you just shared because there's a lot of meat on the bone there. And I want to pick into it a little
Let's
bit.
do it. Let's
So
tear it up.
one. If you're using tools like, call rail, call tracking metrics, what
We
can
use what converts, which is just like CallRail.
we use what converts to? We love them. So if you don't have a system like that, talk to FatCat, explore these systems and get that in place because you want to be tracking this if you're spending this kind of money, right? Um, a couple things. One, it is irresponsible to be investing in marketing and not answering the phone because those leads not only did not connect with you, but they had a negative experience with your brand.
Amen.
And you are just adding fuel to that fire to increase the likelihood that you're getting negative reviews. You're going to get a negative referral, basically like an anti-referral saying, whoa, when you're on those Facebook threads and someone says, oh, I really recommend like this one contractor. And then someone has to chime in and say, oh, that contractor, I didn't like them at all. Well, they didn't actually not like your business. They couldn't get in touch with your business a lot of the time.
Correct.
So they have a negative impression. And trust me, that can lead to that 1-star review that you're pulling your hair out about because they're not a client. Why should they be allowed to write a review for your business? But does Google respond to your emails? They don't respond to mine. Once that review is up there, flag it to your heart's content. It's really hard to
You're
remove.
never going to get it down.
It's really hard to remove the negative. So don't be in the position to have that happen to you, right? So don't add fuel to the fire. You should not be spending more on marketing unless you can handle the leads that you already have, right? So make sure that you are doing an audit. I would be secret shopping your business before you
That's
are
a really good
looking
idea.
your appointment set rate at all. Like, first of all, do you even know it? I would make sure that you look through the last couple months of data and just get a little bit of an assessment going. Two, secret shop your business and see that office manager, that cousin that you hired, that person who you think, is just the bee's knees. Like, are they really the bee's knees to every person who's calling, or are they just sweet talking you and they're not so great on the phone, right? It might be the case that you're in the office and they're super cheerful, but when you're not in the office, their grumpy side shows up, right? So make sure that you're secret shopping, or it's a friend of yours that calls in and secret shops. How often are they able to reach someone who is responsive to their needs? And even if they can't be, even if they're out of the service area, let's say the referral wandered away and now they're, in the county, 10 counties over. Okay, well, maybe you're not going to serve them. But are you making a referral? Do you have connections there? Are you politely saying, no, I'm sorry, we don't serve you, and here's why? Or are you just shutting it down and not giving an explanation, right? So make sure that all that care and treatment is going into your phone calls. It will pay you back. And then when you have that assessment, you've done your audits, your phone calls are, you know how often you're answering. And this just takes a day or two to, call your business a few times and get a few data points. We're not talking about running a PhD level research study here, right? And then, figure out if there's any common ground between the types of calls that are coming in, right? Maybe there's a perception at your business that certain types of work are not that interesting, but others would argue that you do want that business. Like, is there agreement across the board on what business you can handle? What business do you want? What business do you want to refer out? There should be clear policies on that so that the person on the phone can have the confidence that they're giving the right answer and they're steering leads in the right direction. Only then can you say our criteria are set, our expectations are clear, we know where we are and how far of a leap it is to where we want to go. And, a company like Smith AI, like, we are going to guide you through that process of what questions you need to ask up front, and then what happens when they meet the criteria or if they don't. Let's say that we're setting that meeting. The connection there is really important. So we want someone to feel comfortable with your business, that there's been that trust building, and the questions actually help to build that trust, because in asking the right questions, you're demonstrating to that potential customer that you really know your domain. So don't be afraid to, have us or whoever is on your phone lines, asking those questions that help inform, the quality of that work that you're looking at. And then from there, I would say that you can expect anywhere from a 30 to 70% increase in your appointment setting rate, right? So I'm not saying you're going to go from 30% to 100%. I'm saying a 70% increase on that rate that already exists.
So my example of going from 40 to 60 is now not out of line.
No, I think that's quite reasonable. I think that if you already have a 40% appointment set rate, then we're going to look at where are you not having success. And it's probably where you're letting the caller steer the conversation too much. And we need to take back control of that conversation with clear steering questions with those criteria, and a very deliberate, I don't want to say script, but workflow. So the person who's handling that call knows once the criteria is met, the next step is scheduling that conversation, that appointment. And that is the goal of that person who's handling that call, right? So they are going to be held to that expectation. And it's up to you. If you have someone in house, you could incentivize them to have a certain number of quality appointments set, which you may already do. Or for a service like Smith AI, there's no incentive required. It's just a subscription. But that's up to you. I would also say that if you have one person, there's no way your coverage is going to be complete.
No.
You need to have overflow for when they're sick, eating in the restroom, on vacation,
Weekends.
right? Weekends, evenings is after hours, which you always have to have coverage for. So it's overflow, it's after hours, and you don't want to wait too many rings. So you're looking at, 1 to 2 rings to the office before it rolls over to, let's say, Smith AI. And that's going to really improve your lead to appointment set rate, because what we haven't even broken down here is time of day, day of week, etc. How are you going to go to the home shows if you don't have anyone covering
Right.
phone lines? And that's another thing, you want to make sure that if you are embarking on new campaigns, then you have that coverage in place, because the last thing you want is to miss the timing where you're launching new digital ads, you're going to a home show, there's going to be more searches and interest in your business, but you're not prepared for that surge in demand.
This is something that I know we're kind of beating a dead horse, but we have seen this happen so many times where the business wants to grow and they're like, I'm going to market more, but then they are not prepared for the increased volume of leads. And I will go on to say, I mean, we've spent a lot of time promoting one-day bath companies and roofers. We've actually had some of our most successful campaigns where we convert leads on weekends and holidays. So, we did a Valentine's Day, love your bath again, where we had ugly bathroom pictures and, and, over a weekend, and especially when we look at geographies, you're in Buffalo, where it's snowy and a holiday for a product like, I'll do baths and then we'll talk about roofing, but like sticking with baths, it's snowy, people are trapped inside, and they may have relatives over. If we hit them with like a Facebook campaign because they're at home and they're scrolling, we have seen really good conversions on those holiday weekends. And if you're generating phone calls on a holiday weekend, you better have somebody to answer it.
Right, right.
Because otherwise, you're leaving money on the table. You paid for the campaign, you paid for the agency to set it up, you spent the money on the PPC, and now the phone is just ringing and the lights are off in your office and nobody's answering. The other thing I wanted to drill in on I've really struggled with how to do this on this spreadsheet, so bear with me and give me grace if I screw it up. But if we take some of these improvements out and we just stick with our original assumptions, you want to grow revenue, you've got an appointment set rate, you know what your targets are, and you get them from certain sources. Many of our clients, especially in the past year, have reported to us that the leads that they had been buying from Angie's List, Home Advisor, Modernize, the quality of those leads have gone down. So their appointment set rates have gone down. Many times they can't get them on the phone. What they would like to do is not only improve their set rates, but change the mix of the channels where they're getting their leads. So in this scenario, if we took up this hypothetical client that's been buying half of their leads and they're expensive, they're $175 a pop. It is not at all uncommon for us to see a home improvement contractor spend $15,000 to $25,000 a month on lead aggregators. Well, what if they could get that down? Let me see if I can do this to, they're still buying leads, but maybe they're dumping more into their own exclusive branded campaigns.
Yes.
That's SEO. They're trying to drive traffic to their website so they can convert it. And so they're not going through the home advisors. Those leads tend to cost less because they're branded, and the homeowner already has an expectation. I'm not just calling any painter. I'm calling Bob's Painting or Johnny's Roofing. So they set at a higher rate, they're higher quality, and they tend to cost less. If you can change your mix of where you're getting your leads to a better quality source that's an exclusive branded lead, and then if you work with Smith.ai and say you also improve your set rate, you could have the same revenue goal. And with this sort of made up scenario, you're looking at maybe spending $11,000 less per month. I am not making this up. We have seen our clients be able to improve their closing ratio, improve their appointment set rate, and change their lead source mix to be able to squeeze more out of their marketing dollar.
Yep. Yeah, there are three, sort of main levers that we've talked about on this call, that I want to highlight. So one is, the missed leads. Obviously, those don't turn into appointments, right? So the missed leads are also not captured in your total lead volume. So that's going to maybe throw our percentages off. But when you
Right.
start answering every call, you're going to have a higher appointment set rate with that cohort, but we weren't
Right.
even thinking about them before, right? And then there's the group who were calling, but they weren't booking appointments because, Sue in the office is, not incentivized to book an appointment, and she doesn't necessarily care if it's
Because she's the bookkeeper.
the time. Yeah,
You know.
she may be doing it part-time. She may be thinking about her kids, report from school. So who knows what's going on? But she's also probably, and this is actually more quietly sinister, not following the same process every time, even if
Right.
she is a really good player, right? So she has great intent, she has great phone presence, but she's inconsistent. That's going to drive your appointment rate down. So just having a dedicated service to do this is going to more consistently deliver those appointments to you more predictably, right? So you're capturing the audience that's not even reflected here of the leads that never got answered that you can't count, right? You're not counting missed calls because you don't know if every missed call is a lead. You only
Right.
know when you answer the phone who's spam and who's a real lead, right? Who's
Right.
a vendor and who's a real lead. So we're increasing both the numerator and the denominator, which I want to be clear about here. And then the third thing is when we look at the lead source mix, we're also not factoring in what the knock-on effect is of going to the home shows and seeing those referral partners, or those happy clients that you can remind them of your referral program. Maybe you have an incentive program for clients that you give them a gift card every time they refer someone who becomes a new client, right? And that's a way to drive word of mouth up. It's a way to drive, I would have a separate line for referrals here, so that you can measure.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can add that in.
And home shows might not just be a direct lead gen mechanism for you, but it also might be an area where you connect with those clients, whether it's B2B or B2C, and you make sure that those relationships are strong, and you remind them of your referral program, and you give them some things to pass out, and you give them a flyer about, here's what you earn when you make referrals to our business. So make sure that you're thinking about these lead sources as both direct and maybe also indirect contributors of other channels. That's certainly something that I often found when I went to events.
Yeah, and there's only so much I can do with a spreadsheet where I'm trying to appeal
Totally.
to such a wide audience. But, you know, if you can improve your appointment set rate and get in more homes, and then you double down on your sales in-home presentation and you improve your closing ratio, like that that's like the holy grail, where you dial in your lead sources, where you can get more of the lower cost, higher quality leads. Then you're converting more of those into appointments. And then you've got really well trained sales reps. That's where we've seen our clients. I mean, the thing that I love about working with home improvement, our typical client trajectory and life cycle with FatCat is we tend to meet them when they've grown to $2 to $5 million in gross revenue, and they're very ambitious. And we tend to work with them for 3 to 5 and 6 years and watch them grow from that $5 million to 10, 15, 20, 25, and then sell. And they do it by spending a bunch of time in spreadsheets and looking at what you called levers.
Yep.
What are the lead sources? What is the cost per lead? What is the set rate? What is our NSLI, net sale per lead issued. All of those numbers, when you really get into it, if you can improve them by small percentage points, you can squeeze more out of your sales and marketing. And it's just really fun. So I want to stick to our promises. We said there was one more scenario. This one is, go ahead.
I do have one question from someone too.
Okay, well, this is a quick scenario. It might not be as interesting, but this is a real scenario. Many of our clients will start in one city, town, metro area, and then as their business gets more successful, what we've seen is they'll open up a satellite location 200 miles away, and they'll usually staff it with one salesperson, and they'll test the waters to say, okay, if I'm successful in the Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina area, what if I send a sales rep down to Wilmington, and then they'll call us and say, hey, can you generate leads in Wilmington? And we go, sure, let's give it a shot. So in that scenario, we've still got these assumptions of what your revenue was last year, what you want it to be. We know how many leads on average, kind of spread out evenly, you need per month. Wait, somehow my math, okay, yeah. Had to think for a second. So now let's say you haven't changed your overall revenue goal, but you're going to get it from 2 different locations. Then the question we ask is, what's the split? If your overall revenue goal for the whole organization is still that 5,750,000, let's say you get 10% from this new location, then you really only want, or you've got lower expectations. It's one sales rep. You don't even have an office. Then you're looking at, $500,000 in revenue from this new satellite office. Maybe you don't want to do decks there. You only want to do baths and windows, or just baths. We've even had it where people say, I just want to try another location with one service. Well, now we can take some of those scenarios and pretty quickly be able, from a digital marketing perspective, say, okay, business that does bath, windows, and decks in your primary location, you're going to open a satellite location to do just a few baths to see what happens. Now we know with just a few, tweaks to our overall planning tool, we need to generate about 19 leads a month out of that area. So I just wanted to run through one more scenario before we wrapped up, that there's a bunch of different ways to skin this cat. This is the first level of analysis. After we do this, then we typically get into that seasonality. We get into this zip code versus that zip code. What products do we want to promote? But I hope that everybody found this helpful. Sure. I love a spreadsheet, but I know that not everybody loves a spreadsheet as much as I do. So what was the question?
Well, it was a little off topic, but I think it's still relevant. So Paul had asked, do you factor in certain client types? And his example was those who take a very long time to pay versus others that pay fast. Now, obviously, if you have revenue goals and that's going to make a big dent in your revenue goals for when you realize that revenue, then it might be something that you're taking into account. But Janet, is that something that you've encountered that you have any tips for?
I mean, if you look at the whole life cycle of money coming into the business, you've got a stranger, then you've got a prospect, then you've got, a proposal, then they turn into a customer. When you get into the nitty gritty of, for the purposes of this, we'll just stick with baths. Most of our home improvement clients, they take a deposit and then they don't get full payment until the job is installed. Now, if you get really behind on your production, now your realized revenue, you've got all this money that's owed, but you can't collect it because you haven't installed those baths or you haven't installed those roofs. We have gotten into those conversations with our clients, but at that point it's very much a partnership because, we're the marketing company. We're not the bookkeeping or collections company, but we did have a roofing client that just exploded in Wisconsin, did one of my favorite clients. And I went deep and hard with their spreadsheet nerdness. And we were looking at that. We were looking at How many leads do they need? Seasonality, because it's roofing, because they were in Wisconsin, you've got a lot of roof replacements in the summer that people are doing where they know they need to do it. And then there's snow removal, leaks. We were doing all of that. And then the next layer, because this company was growing so fast, they were getting where their production backlog, they sold a job, but maybe that homeowner has to wait X number of weeks before there's a production crew ready to install it. Well, if you collect a deposit and then you don't bill for the final job, but then you're also ordering materials.
Right.
I don't really have an easy answer. I know that this problem exists. It's kind of, it depends on too many factors to give like an easy answer.
Right. I mean, maybe, part of it is just being sure that you have really strong cash reserves before you start taking, appointments that are that far out, or those more bulk developer appointments that you're going to need to purchase quite a lot of materials before you can.
Yeah, on the home improvement front, the thing, and again, like we're on the lead gen side of it. We generate the leads and then say, please take care of these leads when we give them to our clients. And then they have a whole other set of problems to solve after that. But
Yeah.
especially like during COVID, I mean, God, things exploded during COVID. Everybody was at home and they wanted to remodel their house.
Yeah.
And, our clients would drive through a neighborhood and neighbors would like track them down and take pictures of the phone number on the side of their truck. Like they were
Wait forever. Right.
they were swimming in business. Things have slowed down on that front. And, with COVID and then now with some confusion with tariffs, there are issues with getting supplies. So
Right.
let's say you've got a homeowner that wants to replace all their windows, but you can't get windows. That let's so
Might not be your production workers that are available. It's the material availability.
during COVID, there was a weird thing with like, I forget what it was. It was some component of like what goes into making a vinyl window, and you just couldn't get windows.
So they couldn't even make the windows, right?
Well, they
Right.
couldn't install them because they were on such a backlog getting supplies from their suppliers. And then there was a moment during COVID where there was some kind of really specific nail that roofers were using that they were struggling to get these nails. Anyway, as a marketer, I'm fascinated by this stuff, but I don't have answers to it. We
But
generate
diversifying your service lines and diversifying, the materials maybe also that you're able to work with does help you build resilience, Paul, with this.
Yeah. So like if you had a choice, you're in Buffalo and you're paving driveways. Well, that concrete is not going to cure below a certain temperature. So maybe in the winter, you paint indoors.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why people do, both heating and AC, right?
Yes, exactly. So I don't know if I answered that question, but I tried.
Paul, you can feel free and follow up with Janet and have that conversation more extensively. We're not going to get into too many operational aspects in this webinar, and actually we are out of time. Great, thank you. So anyway, Janet, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I hope everyone else had as much fun as we did.
I hope everyone else thinks spreadsheets are fun.
I certainly do. So you will get access to these spreadsheets if you're registered for this webinar. And Janet, you can determine if you're going to make this like a shareable link that we can also include in the YouTube video that people can have access to. And we will get that out to you very shortly. You'll also have access to this recording, which will be posted on YouTube. So hope everyone else has a wonderful rest of your day. Don't forget to reach out to either Smith.ai, FatCat, or both of us if we can help support your business growth. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.